We have a few days until Spiral, the Book of Saw, comes out this Friday, so we are going to be talking about Jigsaw, the 8th installment in the franchise. So is it as good as Saw the Final Chapter, and how does it hold up as a Saw film in this franchise? Let's find out in the review. Welcome back, film fans. This is Let's Be Real, Brad. Today, we're going to be talking about the 2017 film called Jigsaw. So before we get into this review, we got to talk about some of the history behind this movie, because originally they weren't going to make an 8th film because Saw the Final Chapter, or Saw 3D, was technically going to be the last film in this franchise, even though it made a ton of money just like the other films. But I think with Paranormal Activity being as big as it was, taking over the box office and being the next horror franchise, I think they went back to this franchise just to see if it had some life with it, and Jigsaw did prove to have some life, even though it didn't have the best critical results, but it still made a lot of money at the box office, at least making over $100 million. So now that we are finally on the last film in this franchise until Spiral, I have to say that I was pretty disappointed after seeing this as my second watch. One of the biggest reasons I'm very disappointed in this film is that this movie just isn't as interesting or as exciting as those previous films. Sure, most of them are really not all that great and pretty dumb, but at least they had this insane overarching story that they were trying to basically outdo themselves and just retroactively add to those films. So let's talk about some of the positives this movie has, and we're gonna go with that this movie is really watchable and really fun. As most of these movies aren't really all that great, like I was talking about, they do have fun with their traps and they just go completely overboard. There are many moments in this movie that make zero sense whatsoever, but if you can just sit back and just realize that you just gotta turn your brain off a little bit when watching these movies, then I think you can have somewhat of an enjoyable time, especially with this one. But what I like about this one is that there is a ton of traps in this one, and it very feels heavily on those traps, but it also is very different than we have seen from the other films, and that is something that I really respected in this movie. The second positive I have is that the visual effects are really good in this movie. Considering this movie has about a $10 million budget and is way less than Saw the Final Chapter that had the highest budget in the franchise and the absolute horrible visual effects, this movie comes right back and gives us exactly what Saw fans really wanted from this franchise, and that is good and enjoyable visual effects. The last positive I have with this movie is that it's really fast-paced. Pretty much all these movies are very fast-paced, and this one is too, and it's technically the most boring one, if I could say that, but I was still really into this movie because when there is a bad, boring, dialogue-heavy scene of characters we don't care about, we also get a trap literally like 10 seconds later. This movie has a boatload of negatives, and we're going to talk about the insane twist at the end. So I won't give any spoilers on what this twist is or even try to hint at it at all, but I would just like to say that this twist is really stupid. I mean, all of them are in all these movies, but this one in particular just doesn't make any sense. The second negative I have with this movie is that it has terribly written characters. I mean, most of these movies don't really have great characters, but I think for this one, there is no one, and I mean no one, memorable for this movie. At least in the other movies, I could be like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. Oh, I remember that girl from that movie. But I don't remember pretty much anyone from this movie, and I think that could be due to, well, the writing and the story just not being as good and having really bad and forgettable characters. There's a second subplot that's going on with this doctor and these police officers trying to figure out who's doing the killings of Jigsaw, even though Jigsaw has been dead for a long time. But I felt like those scenes were so incredibly boring and just really stupid because of how much they were taking everything so seriously. And my last negative with this movie is that it is not scary at all, just like many of these other ones, but it is very tame and kind of lame when we're talking about the traps in some of the horror moments. So now that we watch Jigsaw, which is strictly rated R and doesn't have an unrated version, you do feel like this movie is very tame in comparison, but that could be due to the other Saw films really not supposed to be R-rated films, even in their theatrical cuts. This is really evident because there are some bloody and awesome moments in this movie that were just amazing to watch, but then there are moments where they do cut away. Overall, I didn't enjoy this movie at all, as I do think it's better than Saw the Final Chapter and Saw 4, but I still think it is a bad movie that just doesn't offer a lot of the exciting and insane moments that we come to expect in these Saw films. I am going to give Jigsaw a 4 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for watching all my Saw movie reviews. I had an extremely fun time watching pretty much most of these movies for the very first time. My Spiral review will be coming out late Thursday night, so be sure to check it out, and I hope you guys are ready to play a game.